Thanks everyone for being here to talk about this important issue. We're joined by several organizations from SAG-AFTRA to the New York Employment Lawyers Association, to New York State AFL-CIO, the Capital Region Area Labor Federation. You'll be hearing from several of those people as we go on. So we're here to talk about a pervasive problem across New York State and the nation, and that's non-compete agreements. Odds are you've never spent any time thinking about non-competes, but if you did, you had a blurry notion that these were limited to super high-paid individuals who run big companies. At one time, that was the case, but that's changed, and the truth is that 1 in 5 Americans are subjected to non-compete agreements. Here in New York State, over 40% of the employers use non-compete agreements. We're talking about employers from the widest variety of industries you can think of. Anything from small engineering companies, to fast food chains, to car rental shops. Most workers sign non-competes without even realizing it. It's part of the onboarding package that everyone's gone through. You sit with HR, and you're given a lot of papers, and you sign a lot of papers. But even if they do realize it, there's no ability to negotiate. It's either you sign it or you don't get the job. And most people assume it'll never be an issue. Everyone goes into jobs optimistic. But often, years later, if you decide you want to go look for a new job, the employer tells them, you can't leave this job and work in any similar field. So the worker is left with only bad decisions. You can pack up and move to a different geographic area. You can find a brand new job in a brand new field, or you can just stay with your current employer. For most people, moving or changing careers is not a practical option, so they end up staying in a job that they want to leave. What we see when people can't change jobs and don't have job opportunities is they don't have a chance to increase their wages. So for millions of people, non-competes are limiting their economic mobility. But that's just the beginning. Non-competes aren't just a problem for people looking to leave their jobs. We held a hearing about this bill in May. We heard from several workers who were fired from their jobs, only to find out that the employer that fired them can control where they work next. One of them spent a full year, spent $35,000 in legal fees that he didn't have, fighting with his employer to be able to go to a new job before a court finally said, you can go work somewhere else. That's a small sample of the horror stories that we've heard. If you spend any time at all thinking about this, it's clear that non-competes are bad for workers. So if they're bad for workers, you might be tempted to think, well, they must be good for business. But it's not a zero-sum game. It turns out that non-competes are bad for most businesses. Now, the issues caused by non-competes affect the entire economic landscape. By keeping workers stuck in their jobs, they lead to wage suppression. By limiting the pool of qualified job applicants, they make it harder for small businesses to find employees. And by preventing people from opening their own businesses, they stifle competition and lead to higher prices for consumers. States that have already banned non-competes have found that it actually allows small businesses to compete for talent. Mobility in the economy is good for the whole economy. It also empowers people to use the skills that they've gained throughout their careers to open new businesses. But there is one group that does benefit from non-competes. It's big corporations who are happy with the status quo. If you turn down your television lately, you might see in a very scary, ominous ad that talks about a bill that's going to shatter the New York economy. I saw the ad and I thought, what's this horrible bill going to do to destroy our state? I'm going to make sure I do something about that. But lo and behold, it turns out it's the non-compete bill. And that the ad's part of a $1 million campaign sponsored by Wall Street business lobbies. It's designed to kill the bill that we passed to ban non-compete agreements. But let me tell you something. When somebody spends $1 million to try to stop change, that means they're scared change is coming. Banning non-compete agreement would put an end to the competitive advantage that Wall Street billionaires rely on to keep New York's small businesses at bay and to stifle the rest of the economy. That's where they're trying to convince the powers to be that non-competes are essential for their businesses. But make no mistake, banning non-competes agreement would be good for New York State's economy. It would help to shatter the glass ceilings that are holding workers back. Every last bit of evidence that we have tells us that a non-compete ban would be good for everybody except billionaires and mega corporations. If you follow the facts, one thing is clear. This is not a fight between New York businesses and New York workers. This is a fight between Wall Street and Main Street. And the people standing in front of you are here because they side with Main Street. We side with workers who want to choose their own career path. We side with entrepreneurs who want to open new businesses. And we side with small business owners who are the backbone of our state's economy, who want to be able to compete with giant industries. We stand together to correct the lies being peddled by Wall Street and their dark money. And we are here today to ask Governor Hochul to stand with us and with the people of the state of New York to sign the non-compete ban into law. We've got a diverse group of experts and other advocates here this morning. You're going to hear from a few of them. They're going to explain how prevalent and harmful non-compete agreements are to our entire economy. Our next speaker is off a very successful campaign for workers all across New York and America. And that's Rebecca Damon, the Executive Director at New York's SAG-AFTRA. Come on up, Rebecca.
Hi there. My name is Rebecca Damon, and I am the Executive Director of SAG-AFTRA New York and Executive Director for Labor Policy and International Affairs. SAG-AFTRA stands for Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. SAG-AFTRA represents 160,000 actors, which you obviously know, announcers, broadcast journalists, dancers, DJs, news writers, program hosts, recording artists, singers, stunt performers, voice-over artists. If you're in front of a camera or behind a microphone, then you should be SAG-AFTRA. So those media professionals, we have national offices in Los Angeles and in New York, local offices nationwide, and our members work together to secure protections for media artists in the 21st century and beyond. Having just won a historic strike against the AMPTP, SAG-AFTRA members know the importance of standing up for workers' rights. I'm here today representing the over 36,000 members here in New York who both live and work in the Empire State. We have decades-long experience fighting unjust non-competes across the country, and that is why we support this bill, which prohibits the use of non-compete agreements in New York. This legislation is strong, pro-competitive, good public policy for not just New York, but also for its workers. Non-compete agreements enjoy an inherent anti-competitive, and they lead to wage and salary stagnations for workers of all salary ranges. They limit and restrain employee mobility and artificially prevent workers from marketing their talents, their services, and skills in a free market. This is especially true of those workers who have reached a certain level of success in a field, who have chosen to settle down in New York, raise their family in New York, establish roots in New York. Workers, regardless of their salary, should never be prohibited from changing employers if their current workplace is not fruitful for them. And they should never be prohibited from continuing to work in a location where they have established their family and permanence. It's absurd to allow companies to restrict employee mobility at only the employer's benefit. This disincentivizes competition, and it discourages a robust New York talent pool, which we very much have. Any employee whose contract is expiring or is terminated from their job should be able to pursue more lucrative employment opportunities. It just sounds absolutely silly that we're even talking about this. Forcing employees to choose between accepting pay, getting paid less to stay in their current employer, or choosing to have to leave their community or their chosen field of work to adhere to an employer's non-compete is patently unfair to the worker, and it's wrong for New York State. A non-compete clause allows workers' employer to force the employee to choose between better work opportunities or stability or consistency in their home life, which makes it unnecessary for the employer to make a fair market-based offer. Employers have argued over and over again that non-competes are necessary to protect trade secrets. This is false. There are agreements in employment contracts that prohibit an employee from sharing trade secrets or confidential information, and those provisions can be enforced without a non-compete in place. SAG-AFTRA has never challenged a ban on those kinds of clauses, and a ban on non-competes would not interfere with this protection for employers. Some employers would have you believe that enacting a non-compete legislation in New York would hurt New York State's economy. As you've heard from the senator, that is patently untrue, and it ignores the real world success this kind of worker protection has seen in other parts of the country. For example, non-competes have generally been unenforceable in California for many years, and yet California has established some of the largest, most successful, most competitive, revenue-generating industries in the country. Just take a look at the tech sector. Despite these unsubstantiated theatrics and misleading claims to the contrary, this legislation would have no negative impact on our economy, but it would actually amplify economic equity in a state and continue to highlight New York's leadership for workers' rights. Studies have shown time and again that non-competes have an outsized negative impact on women in the workforce at every salary level. It's especially nefarious as women pursue executive and entrepreneurial opportunities. The threat of legal actions in these clauses discourages women from seeking better opportunities to increase their compensation and their responsibilities. This directly impacts the workplace. Non-competes have no place in New York for any worker at any salary level. This is not an accidental side effect of non-competes, but it is central to their existence. The current practice of employers, including non-competes as standard, non-negotiable, boilerplate language in employee agreements, emphasizes their predatory nature. Why do they include them as standard language, you might be asking yourself? Not because they've been fairly negotiated and hold up in court, because it so happens that New York courts do not favor these types of agreements, and they scrutinize those terms closely. It's because big employers know that most employees, even at the highest compensation levels, do not have the time, the knowledge, or the resources to challenge their employer in court. As we've mentioned already, non-competes are bad business no matter the salary range. Salary caps that create non-competes for certain workers but not others is bad public policy. Higher paid, experienced employees are entering a point in their work life where they are more likely to be settled geographically. They're caring for young children. They're contributing to their schools. They're contributing to their communities. That makes it almost impossible for them to seek employment outside of their community, and yet that is exactly what non-compete agreements force them to do. This limitation has an outsized impact on women in higher salary grades, and it is unconscionable. Financial caps give the impression that non-compete clauses are totally acceptable for populations of workers earning above the cap, regardless of what those other factors, when not considered, would have a negative ripple effect on people and the communities that make up each worker's literal and metaphorical village. This is contrary to current New York State policy. Employers allowing the unfettered use of non-competes at certain salary levels would take New York backwards. In a state that is known for progressive worker policies, this would be a stain. While I represent the members of SAG-AFTRA, there has been such strong support from our partners at the New York State AFL-CIO the entire entertainment union community, including the Directors Guild of America, the Writers Guild of America East, Theatrical Teamsters Local 817, IATSC Local 52 Motion Picture Studio Mechanics, IATSC Local 600 International Cinematographers Guild, IATSC Local 829 United Scenic Artists, Motion Picture Editors Guild, IATSE Local 700. SAG-AFTRA strongly endorses this as a pro-competitive public policy for New York industries and workers. We want to thank Senator Ryan, huge thank you, and Assembly Member LaToya Joyner for introducing the legislation, and we are very grateful to the Senate and the Assembly for having the courage to stand with workers. We encourage our Governor, Governor Hochul, to sign the bill into law. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, and congratulations to SAG-AFTRA for the wonderful victory that you just had. The American Economic Liberties Project has been supportive of this bill from the start, and we have Helen Broslin with us today, so come on up, Helen.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Senator Ryan for his leadership on this issue. Hi everyone, as Senator Ryan said, my name is Helen Brosnan. I'm the Executive Director of Fight Corporate Monopolies, the campaign and political arm of American Economic Liberties Project. We're an organization dedicated to breaking up concentrated power, so it's obvious why we are here today and why we enthusiastically support this legislation. Governor Hochul has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to secure a monumental win for workers, consumers, and small businesses by signing this bill. It's worth noting the Biden administration's Federal Trade Commission has made this a major push of their progressive economic agenda, calling for a total ban on non-compete agreements. Several state legislatures since that push have followed suit. Minnesota moved swiftly to pass and sign a ban on non-compete agreements within weeks. Now it's time for New York to step up. Unsurprisingly, corporate boogeymen are desperately fighting this bill through a dark money campaign for fear of it impacting their bottom line. Respectfully, their lies and fear-mongering only make our case stronger. If the guys who want to squeeze us for profit and low job quality are opposing this bill, the choice to sign it into law could not be clearer. We are here today to urge the governor to ignore these nefarious and untrue claims made by the same big businesses and big corporations who are price gouging New Yorkers every day. We are here to urge her to stand on the side of the Biden administration, to stand with common sense, to stand with an economy that's competitive and works for everyone, not exploitative employers and corporations. Today, my organization, Fight Corporate Monopolies, is actually out with a new ad campaign calling on the governor to sign this bill immediately and exposing the dark money interests fighting the legislation. It will air across the state this week, and we continue to air our campaign until the bill is signed. Governor Hochul, every day you wait to sign this bill, these are some of the workers across New York's economy who are trapped in exploitative and unfair agreements. Low-wage fast food workers, blocked from working at a nearby chain restaurant that might offer better pay or better opportunity. Hair salon and nail workers, some of who have to travel hours to get to their new job. Doctors, nurses, dental workers, and healthcare workers of all kinds, trying to help their communities, provide expertise, and often providing life-saving care to patients. Workers who have faced sexual harassment or assault on the job and are then trapped in violent and abusive working conditions. Workers who have a great idea to start their own business and should be able to do so in New York, not forced to move away to some other state. These are the New Yorkers who have had to move their families and uproot their lives to find new work because of these non-compete agreements. These are New Yorkers who want their business to thrive and to provide good jobs for the state's economy. These are New Yorkers who are trying to make an honest living, provide for their families and communities, and deserve full economic freedom and mobility. We could not endorse this bill more and are encouraging Governor Hochul to sign the bill into law today. Thanks so much.
Thank you to Helen and the American Economic Liberties Project. The National Employment Lawyers Association has been a strong advocate for this bill, and today we're honored to have Rachel Noportra here. So please come on up, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Senator Ryan, and We're so happy to be part of this awesome organization and this movement. So again, I'm here on behalf of NELA New York, which is the New York affiliate of the National Employers and Lawyers Association. And non-competes are something that we've dealt with extensively as employment lawyers. They prevent people from reaching their full potential. They restrict their employment opportunities. They hamper career mobility and professional growth. This bill would stop that. As employment attorneys, over and over again, we see these detrimental effects of non-compete agreements. People are often required to sign the restrictive covenants as a condition of employment. Sometimes as a condition of continued employment, they'll be sprung with a document from their employer, brought to HR and asked to sign it immediately. People, in general, it doesn't matter what income level you are, we all need to work and we all need these jobs. And we think very little about the effect of these agreements when we get our jobs. I often receive panic calls from people who have just left an employer and are now reviewing the agreements that they signed. While we can assuage their fears by telling them that the courts disfavor non-competes, that they can't be overly broad or restrictive or unduly burden the employee, often the problem is the chilling effect that they have. Most employees don't want to hire an attorney, they're afraid of the litigation, and even worse, perspective that you can be hired, fired, for any reason, as long as it's not an unlawful reason. To restrict an employee's ability to leave a job does not make any sense in this context. They've rightly gained expertise in a field, and to turn around and say to them that they can't take their knowledge elsewhere is a restriction on workers' freedoms and rights. My mother used to say, you work for a company, but the muscles you build on the job are yours to keep. But that's not true if your last employer can prevent you from using your muscles elsewhere. Non-competes are not permissible in the legal profession. The legal profession has not crumbled, and they should be similarly banned for all employees. I have a quick kind of anecdote of an experience that I had. I had a young woman come to me some years back. She was a physical therapist. She had been hired. It was her first professional job. Didn't look at any documents that she signed. Felt that the job was a bad fit and quit. Afterwards, she was offered a job from a prospective employer and learned at that time that her employer was threatening to take action against her. The non-compete that she signed said that she wasn't allowed to work anywhere within a 5-mile radius of the provider's office. The provider had an office in the financial district and one on the Upper West Side. So she came to me and was devastated by it and basically had to then hire an attorney, negotiate a new restriction because they wouldn't get rid of the restriction that she signed. And all the while, she's got the threat of the prospective employer deciding it's not working for them. So especially for young employees, this is an extremely detrimental provision. Non-competes are terrible. A lot of situations that I've seen, I have employees who decide to go do a different field because they don't want to fight. And that's heartbreaking. So we truly believe, we at NELA truly believe that this bill preserves the interests of both employees and employers. Under the bill, employers can still have confidentiality agreements. You've got protection of trade secrets codified in the law. You can even have a no solicitation of clients. This bill allows small employers to hire the talent they want to hire without being afraid that they're going to have to spend money defending a case in court. So just finally, we encourage our kids to choose professions, to work hard, to continually seek professional advancement. We tell them to leave jobs that hinder their growth. Non-competes can hinder this development. We value innovation, growth, and job mobility as a society. This bill protects the vibrancy of our workforce, and NELA is so happy to join it and have this great bill being pushed forward by the senators. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, and for the good work of Neela. I'm pleased to bring up Paul San from the National Employment Law Project.
Thanks so much, Senator, for your leadership and Assemblymember Joyner's leadership on this important issue. I'm Paul San with the National Employment Law Project. We're a national employment and labor policy research and advocacy organization headquartered in New York City. Non-competes are some of the most abusive and unnecessary employment practices that workers face. An action to eliminate them once and for all is long overdue. That's why President Biden and bipartisan coalitions in Congress are calling to ban them completely. And that's why this coalition of about 50 organizations, including unions, workers' rights organizations, gender and racial justice groups, nonpartisan economic policy organizations, and individual businesses in the tech and finance sectors are urging the governor to sign this common sense legislation. And we're equally urging her to reject the Wall Street and Business Council's shameful attempt to urge her to veto it or to push some sort of carve-out for certain workers. For workers, as you've heard, non-compete suppress pay, and there's a huge body of research documenting that at every level in income distribution. For low-wage workers, I mean, they're truly outrageous. It's really like indentured servitude to lock a fast food worker or a janitor or a home care worker into a job and prevent them from leaving for a better paying job. But as you heard from SAG-AFTRA, they're no less abusive and harmful for professional workers who are relatively higher paid. I mean, leaving your job for a better paying opportunity with better advancement is really one of the only tools that workers have to make their way professionally. And it's just profoundly unfair for an employer to be able to deny workers that. And in fact, as you've heard, in some cases, employers have fired workers and then enforced non-competes against them, which is, really takes it to the next level. Especially at a time when New Yorkers at every income level are struggling with the skyrocketing cost of housing and of living costs that have really been rising at the highest rate in 50 years. This is a very simple, high-impact thing that Albany can do to boost incomes across the state. As you've heard, it's especially important for women and workers of color that we ban non-competes. Non-competes can lock them into an unsafe, abusive job and prevent them from leaving it for a safer one. But also, the research shows that they have a disproportionately harmful impact on mobility and pay advancement for women workers of color. In part, this is believed to be that women workers of color often, because of family responsibilities or other factors, have less flexibility to relocate to another geographic region or to undertake a new job with a long commute to get out from under a non-compete. So it's really crucial, that they be banned. And in a way, banning non-competes is a lot like other key reforms that New York has made in recent years to promote gender justice in the workplace, like mandating pay scale transparency, a key reform that just took effect. And so it's a safeguard that's really crucial that will be extended to workers at all income levels. As you heard from Helen Brosnan, for the broader economy, non-competes reduce entrepreneurship and innovation. And as you'll hear next from Dr. Jose David, in the healthcare sector, they reduce access to care, especially in underserved communities of the state. The claims of the Business Council lobbyists like the Partnership for New York City and Goldman Sachs that banning non-competes will drive businesses out of the state or hurt the state's economy are utterly unfounded and without evidence. To the contrary, the fact that California has banned non-competes for decades and is the nation's hub of business innovation and startup culture tells you really all you need to know. All legitimate business concerns about protecting trade secrets or client rosters when executives or engineers leave a company can be addressed through less restrictive means that this legislation continues to allow companies to use. Those are things like confidentiality and non-disclosure conditions in employment contracts and bans on poaching clients. We therefore urge New York to follow the lead of states such as California, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Minnesota, which have banned non-competes for workers at all income levels. And a complete ban has similarly been proposed by President Biden's Federal Trade Commission, which we understand has sent a letter to Governor Hochul backing the legislation, urging her to sign it as proposed, banning non-competes for workers at all levels. It's also really noteworthy that the coalition in Congress, there's legislation, the Workforce Mobility Act of 2023, calling for banning non-competes completely, is bipartisan, sponsored by Republicans and Democrats. There's really almost nothing in Congress these days that's bipartisan, and to show that people are reaching across the aisle to call for ending once and for all this abuse really speaks volumes. So we urge the governor to help build momentum for long overdue national action by signing the non-compete ban as approved by the legislature and resisting attempts at any sort of a carve-out. And then I actually would close with just one other request also. It's actually proven surprisingly difficult to get a meeting with her team. Many of the members of the coalition supporting this legislation have been trying to without success. So we really respectfully request that she meet with the members of this coalition to really, which include business supporters, tech firms, firms from the finance industry that support the ban. We'd really urge your team, we welcome the chance to sit down with them to talk through why this is just such common sense legislation and that it deserves her signature as passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul Hassan. And Paul and I have worked on issues together for a super long time. It's really good to reunite with you around this issue, Paul. So thank you so much. Today, the final speaker is going to be from the New York State Academy of Family Physicians, and we're happy to have with us today Dr. Jose David. So, Dr. David, come on up. Thank you, Dr. David. Thank you.
So, my name is Dr. Jose David, and I'm a family physician and past president of the New York State Academy of Family Physicians, which represents 6,000 physicians and residents and doctors in training. I'm proud to be standing here beside the senator for this important bill. And especially, again, we're 6,000 members of my academy, but there's about 90,000 physicians in this state. And 85% of them are in big corporate organizations. And you can just imagine, if you have this non-compete clause, you're affecting 85% of the physicians who are in practice right now. In the healthcare space, this bill is critical to protect our patient access and continued care from a healthcare provider. You just imagine if your healthcare provider is told to not practice within a certain radius, usually centers about 30 to 50 miles for the next 2 to 3 years, you will lose access to this physician. Patients cannot just travel that far to follow their primary care physician. Non-compete clauses are highly disruptive, as mentioned by the other speakers, and prohibit the continuity of care. This is all about patient access. I still remember one surgeon who had to relocate from downtown Albany to Lake George because he cannot practice for 2 years because of this non-compete clause. Of course, the inverse impact is very important for primary care and prevent physicians, even on very difficult situations and practices, and because of the diverse employment situation. And this is really something that has to be addressed. We're stuck. A lot of us are stuck with this, and I think that this bill needs to pass. Governor, you have to pass this. If you believe in patient access for our patients in the state, you have to sign this bill. We make you have the opportunity to relocate, to practice medicine wherever we want to be if we're not happy with our current situation. This non-compete is just I just don't think why we should have this around. So Senator, again, thank you, and Governor, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. If you have any questions of myself or anyone assembled, happy to answer them now, and also all the folks here will stick around for a little while if you want to talk.
So someone mentioned that the governor doesn't, her people don't want to meet with you. Do you see that as a sign that she's going to veto the bill? She doesn't, you know.
We don't really know. I mean, I think there's been some turnover in her team, so perhaps that's part of it. But still, it's we assume they're meeting with the business council or Goldman Sachs or some of the other supporters on the other side. So we really would welcome the chance to sit down with them very soon to make the case for this important legislation.
How unusual is it for the governor's staff not to meet with somebody about a bill before a decision on a veto or something as well? Have you ever experienced that before? And do you attribute that position at all to the lobbying campaign that spent so much money against this bill? Or I don't know if you can speak to motivation.
I would just say it's highly unusual. I mean, I think in almost all legislation we're involved with, we are able to get meetings. Again, it's possible there's been some turnover on her team, so that's maybe some of it. But I don't know. We would just it's highly unusual. We would respectfully request the opportunity to meet with her team about this.
So you've been around a while. So in the past,
Back.
So in the past, past governors, that's been routine. You're interested in a bill and whether the governor's going to sign or
think
veto.
of a chance. I mean, another piece of labor legislation in Albany where that we've worked on where we have not been able to get a meeting with the governor's team.
Senator Ryan, could you speak to the impact that non-competes have on most in New York and Buffalo? And what are the range of industries that this affects? Fast food, hospitals, what's kind of the range?
It's remarkable that since I started doing research on this bill about 4 years ago, the people in everyday life I come across who are impacted. A few years ago, I rented a car on Main Street in Buffalo, and I asked the guy at the counter, "Are you under a non-compete?" He had no idea what I was talking about. When I returned the car, he pulled me aside and said, "I looked through my file. I'm under a non-compete." And he pointed to the competing car rental across the street. And he said, "Does that mean I can't go work for them for $1 more an hour?" And I said, "Yep, that's what that means." I met a welder recently, went through all different welding certifications. It's an in-demand job. Their employer switched them from first to second shift, and that conflicted with his spouse's shifts, and that's how they pay daycare. So he said, if you move to second shift, I'm gonna have to quit. And HR said, "Well, you can quit. You can't be a welder anymore in Western New York." And then closer to home, my wife and child's family physician, once they tried to make an appointment, and they were told that doctor doesn't work there anymore. Do you have any information on that doctor? Nope, no information on the doctor. Happened to meet her at a supermarket 3 months later, and he said, "What happened to you?" She said, "Well, I got into a beef with my practice group, and I separated from them. But it turns out I had a non-compete where I couldn't practice medicine within 25 miles of Buffalo. So from that point on, until she was able to come back, my wife and kids drove 25 miles to see a family physician." So it spread so far from industry to service sector to professionals, and the time has really come to ban non-competes. Several years ago, this was looked at as a bit of a economic folly. I don't know about that. It's going to hurt the economy. But over the last several years, this issue has come smack dab in the middle of Democratic national policy led by President Biden and the National Labor Relations Act. And the National Labor Relations Act recently opined that all non-competes violate the National Labor Relations Act. And President Biden, through rulemaking, is poised to ban non-competes. So it really went from an idea that made you scratch your head to right in the middle of economic thinking of how we raise wages in the nation and how we encourage entrepreneurship. We'll be around here if anyone wants to chat with anyone one-on-one. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you everyone here.